The Korean War, a conflict that erupted in the early 1950s, yet remains shrouded in the shadows of history. Even the name itself seems lost to many. It's a war that doesn't often make it into the history books or the collective memory of the public. Sandwiched between World War II and Vietnam, it's often called the Forgotten War. But forgotten by who? The soldiers who fought bravely on foreign soil, the families who waited anxiously for their return, or the Korean people whose lives were forever changed? Certainly not by those who fought there. For the soldiers, the memories of the battles, the camaraderie, and the losses are etched deeply into their minds. They remember the harsh winters, the grueling marches, and the constant threat of enemy fire, not by the families who lost loved ones. The pain of losing a son, a brother, a father, or a friend is a wound that never fully heals. The letters, the photographs, and the memories are all that remain of those who never came home. And certainly not by the Korean people, forever scarred by a conflict that never truly ended. The war left a trail of destruction, displacing millions and tearing families apart. The scars of the war are still visible in the divided Korean peninsula. This police action, as it was called, was anything but. It was a full-scale war, with all the horrors and tragedies that come with it. The term police action belies the true nature of the conflict and the suffering it caused. It was a brutal conflict, a proxy war between superpowers. The Korean War was a battleground for the Cold War, with the United States and its allies on one side, and the Soviet Union and China on the other. The stakes were high, and the cost in human lives was immense. It was a fight for survival on both sides of the 38th parallel, a line drawn on a map that tore a nation in two. The division of Korea into North and South was a geopolitical decision that had devastating consequences for the Korean people. The Korean War deserves to be remembered, not just for its battles and political machinations, but for the human cost paid by millions. The stories of bravery, sacrifice, and resilience are a testament to the enduring human spirit. We owe it to those who lived through it to remember their stories and honor their legacy. To understand the Korean War, we need to rewind the clock. We need to go back to a time when the world was in turmoil, a time when nations were grappling with the aftermath of a devastating global conflict. World War II ends, but its shockwaves reverberate. The world is left in ruins, cities are destroyed, and millions of lives are lost. The war may have ended, but the scars it left behind are deep and lasting. Korea, occupied by Japan for decades, is suddenly free. But freedom isn't simple. The joy of liberation is quickly overshadowed by the harsh realities of a divided nation. The Korean people, who have longed for independence, now face an uncertain future. The Allies, victorious but divided, split Korea in two. The 38th parallel becomes the line that separates not just land, but ideologies and futures. This division is not just a geographical one, it is a division of hearts and minds. The Soviet Union in the north, the United States in the south, two superpowers, each with their own vision for the future of Korea, take control of their respective halves. The seeds of conflict are sown. Two Koreas emerge, each a mirror reflecting the ideologies of their sponsors. In the north, the influence of the Soviet Union is evident in the rise of communism. In the south, the presence of American troops signals a commitment to democracy and capitalism. The North, under Kim Il-sung, embraces communism. Propaganda posters and speeches glorify the new regime, promising a bright future under the banner of socialism. The people are urged to unite and build a new, stronger Korea. The South, led by Syngman Rhee, aligns with the West. The South Korean government, with the support of the United States, works to establish a democratic society. Flag-raising ceremonies and public addresses emphasize the importance of freedom and independence. Neither side accepts this division. Tensions simmer, border skirmishes become more frequent, and political leaders engage in intense discussions, each side unwilling to concede any ground. The division of Korea is a wound that refuses to heal. The stage is set for a conflict that will engulf the peninsula. As troops mobilize and tensions reach a boiling point, the world watches with bated breath. The Korean War is about to begin, a war that will shape the future of the Korean peninsula and leave a lasting impact on global politics. June 25, 1950. The fragile peace shatters. On this fateful day, the world witnesses the dawn of a new conflict that would shape the course of history. The Korean peninsula, already divided by ideological differences, becomes the epicenter of a brutal war. North Korean troops, armed and trained by the Soviets, surge across the 38th parallel. With precision and determination, they launch a surprise attack, catching the South Korean forces off guard. The Soviet Union's support is evident in the advanced weaponry and military tactics employed by the North. Their objective? Unify Korea by force. The North Korean leadership, driven by a vision of a single, communist Korea, orchestrates a meticulously planned invasion. Propaganda posters flood the streets, rallying the population behind the cause of reunification. Seoul, the South Korean capital, falls quickly. The city's defenses crumble under the relentless assault. Buildings are reduced to rubble and the streets are filled with the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Civilians flee in terror, seeking refuge from the advancing forces. The world reacts with shock. News of the invasion spreads like wildfire, reaching every corner of the globe. International leaders scramble to respond, their faces etched with concern and disbelief. The sudden outbreak of war sends ripples through the global community. The United Nations, spurred by US President Truman, condemns the invasion. In an emergency session, the UN Security Council passes a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of North Korean forces. President Truman, resolute in his stance, pledges support for South Korea. A multinational force, largely composed of American troops, is assembled to aid South Korea. Soldiers from various nations unite under the UN banner, ready to defend the South against the northern aggressors. The skies buzz with the sound of military planes, and ships set sail towards the conflict zone. What began as a regional conflict rapidly escalates into a proxy war, a battleground for Cold War tensions. The Korean War becomes a symbol of the larger struggle between communism and democracy, with both sides receiving support from their respective allies. The stakes are high, and the world watches anxiously as the conflict unfolds. The Korean War becomes a truly global conflict. American troops led by General Douglas MacArthur land at Inchon, a daring amphibious assault that turns the tide of the war. The North Koreans are pushed back, driven almost to the Chinese border. Victory seems within reach, but the war is far from over. It's about to take a dramatic turn, one that will drag on for years and leave an indelible mark on the Korean peninsula. China, fearing an enemy on its border, unleashes a massive counteroffensive. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops pour across the Yalu River. The UN forces, caught off guard, are forced to retreat. Seoul changes hands again. The war grinds to a bloody stalemate. The conflict settles into a brutal back and forth along the 38th parallel. Neither side gains a decisive advantage. The human cost mounts with each passing day. For the Korean people, the war is a nightmare. Cities and villages are reduced to rubble. Families are torn apart. Millions are displaced, forced to flee their homes. Civilians endure unimaginable hardship, trapped between the warring armies. Yet amidst the devastation, there is resilience. Ordinary Koreans demonstrate extraordinary courage and compassion. They care for the wounded, share meager rations, and cling to hope. The war, for all its horrors, forges a national identity, a shared experience of suffering and survival. July 27, 1953. After 3 long years, an armistice is signed. The guns fall silent, but there is no true peace. Korea remains divided, separated by a demilitarized zone, a scar across the peninsula. The Korean War, though over, becomes a frozen conflict, a symbol of the Cold War's global reach. The two Koreas, locked in a tense standoff, embark on vastly different paths. The North, isolated and authoritarian, ruled by the Kim dynasty. The South, embracing democracy and economic development. The Korean War may be over, but its legacy endures. Millions of lives lost, families forever divided. The Korean Peninsula remains a flashpoint, a reminder of the Cold War's enduring tensions. The war's impact extends far beyond Korea. It reshaped American foreign policy, fueled the military-industrial complex, and solidified the Cold War's global divide. The forgotten war serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of ideological conflict and the enduring legacy of division. The Korean War ended without a peace treaty, only an armistice. The two Koreas remain technically at war. The dream of unification, a yearning for a unified peninsula, persists. But can the wounds of the past be healed? Can the chasm of ideology and mistrust be bridged? The future of Korea remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the Korean War, though often forgotten, continues to cast a long shadow over the peninsula and the world.